If someone invited you to visit the Devil's Throat, would you go? Well, I saw that and more when I took a trip from Cochabamba, Bolivia, all the way to the Iguazu Falls that harbors the border between Brazil and Argentina when I was only 13 years old. The beautiful, sometimes dangerous, Iguazu Falls are remotely located between the border of Argentina and Brazil. And you know what? Getting there was half the fun. Iguazu Falls is located close to Paraguay, in between Argentina and Brazil at the north. But before I tell you about my trip to the falls, I want to tell you about my trip getting there, because getting there was half the fun. We started off in Cochabamba, Bolivia, where I was living with my family, and I took this trip with my friend Margaret and her parents. We started in Cochabamba, Bolivia, took an airplane to Santa Cruz, Bolivia, in the southern part of Bolivia, and from there we went to the border between Bolivia and Argentina. They made us disembark the bus and walk across the border. I don't know why, except we had to carry our own luggage, and I was traveling with my guitar as well. And the sand at the border was so soft that every step we took, we sunk in up to our knees. So it was quite a hike, just walking across a border. A little different than maybe what we experience here in the El Paso Juarez border, I assure you. So, from Santa Cruz, we went to Salta, Argentina, and from there the bus continued to Córdoba, where we spent the night. And let me tell you, Argentine beef is as good as they have said. I still remember the steak I had in Córdoba. The next day, we got on a plane that took us to Asunción, Paraguay. And in Paraguay, we boarded this brand new, specially designed, flatbed riverboat that would take us all the way up the Rio Paraná and the Rio Plata until we finally arrived at Iguazu Falls in Argentina. Our accommodations at the falls were very primitive. We were in mud huts with dirt floors and just a single bulb hanging from a wire and no plumbing inside. So it was indeed quite primitive. The Rio Plata is a major tributary of the Amazon River, according to geography.com. From the Rio Plata, which means Silver River in English, we took this maiden voyage of the riverboat all the way up the Rio Plata to the Paraná, and from there, 2 days later, we arrived at the docks, not far from the actual Iguazu Falls. According to softschools.com, the falls are taller and wider than Niagara Falls, and they are considered to be the longest falls in the world. And they are spectacularly beautiful, surrounded by the Amazon jungle. Our tour of the Iguazu Falls took 3 days. The first day, we stopped at this place called the Twin Falls, which, as you can see, are 2 falls that come into this basin of water. And in the basin of water, people were allowed to swim on the sides, but they warned us about going into the middle because there was a current created by this narrow passage in the boulders. I was a strong swimmer and managed to stay safe, but Margaret got caught in the current and was carried up over these rocks, and her father and I finally rescued her about 100 yards down. She was a little bruised, but fine, and terrified of the experience. After the Twin Falls, we went to a place called Angel Falls, and you need to visit Angel Falls in the morning. The morning light comes across the falls, and as the mist rises, it takes on a special color that is heavenly, and that's why they named it the Angel Falls. From the Angel Falls, the next day, our last day, we took a trip to La Garganta del Diablo, which means the Devil's Throat. The Devil's Throat is formed by a circular edge of the river that falls a total of 82 meters, or 269 feet. This is according to the Iguazu National Park website. These falls are so deep, this area is so deep, that You can't hardly hear the water hit the bottom, but you can attest to the water is hitting somewhere because the mist rises almost all the way up level with us at the top. It was spectacular, it was frightening, and it was amazing. We took a little boat that took us across to a little cropping of land, and from there we were able to sort of peek over the edge and take a look at it. Nowadays, as you can see, they've built platforms, but those were not there to begin with. This whole experience was so amazing, I don't remember going home. I just remember the end of the falls. And I don't recall the route we took to get all the way back to Cochabamba, Bolivia. It may have involved all three of these forms of transportation, bus, train, and perhaps even a plane. So as you can see from the map on the side, map of Bolivia, we were coming from Paraguay all the way up to Cochabamba, where I was living with my family at the time. The entire time we were at the falls, the tour guides kept telling us that they were very proud that in Argentina, they were keeping the falls natural, pure, touched as little as possible with just little dirt trails and rope bridges to get across. Whereas on the Brazilian side, they were modernizing it. They had plans to put in an elevator. They were building roads for cars to drive on and a big fancy hotel. And the Argentinians didn't feel like that was the proper treatment of such beautiful wilderness as this. As the American naturalist and nature writer John Burroughs once wrote, "I go to nature to be soothed and healed and to have my senses put in order." I have to tell you that my trip to Iguazu Falls was very much like that. My senses were soothed and healed, and it put my senses about nature and wilderness, and particularly the Amazon jungle, into complete order.